Welcome, everyone, to this week's Relive the Magic podcast. I am your host, Dallas Thompson, and today I am joined by Alex Storis. Say hello.
Hello.
And we have a lot of things to talk about today. Most of it actually is some good news for the first time in a while, which is nice. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. But before we do, you can follow us on our social media platforms on Twitter or Instagram. We're also on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes. You can find all of it by looking up Relive the Magic on any of those platforms, and we'd appreciate your support on there. Okay, so our first news topic today comes in from California, and basically, last week it was announced that theme parks could begin opening April 1st, and then more recently it's been announced they could open sooner than that, but that's been leading people to speculate, when will Disneyland open, when will Universal Studios open, when will all these things start to open. But actually today, Universal started their Taste of Universal event, I think is what it's called. Today's the first day of that. Yeah. So that's the first day they've been open, and next week Disneyland will start their event, Touch of Disney, which is basically the same thing. It's a food and beverage event with merchandise locations open as well. And for them, it's kind of just a way to get back into the parks for the first time in a while. But it looks like we don't have to wait very long to get back into the actual parks and ride the rides. The theme parks can reopen April 1st. And as a California resident, how does that make you feel?
Wow. Honestly, it's like, it took about a year because, we just been waiting because, like last summer, I know, there have been plans of, reopening, but there was no opening time frame for whenever these parks, but it's nice. It's nice to finally see, a light at the end of the tunnel, things, especially now, we're moving into the red tire. So next Monday, movie theaters get to open, indoor dining. So lots of indoors. We get to be in indoors now.
Nice. That's very exciting. It is worth noting, though, Disneyland came out and said they won't be opening April 1st exactly, because that's just when they can open. They still have to bring back, employees, train them for the COVID protocols. And I think I read the capacity to be limited to 15% or something like that, at least for indoors.
15 capacity, 25% capacity, I believe.
Gotcha. And also part of that is movie theaters will be able to open back up, which is great news for the movie industry as a whole, because New York and LA are the two biggest markets for movie theaters, especially for the big movies. And New York opened theaters this past week. LA will be opening next week. And so that fares pretty well for things like Black Widow, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and all the other big movies coming up soon. So that's not just great news for theme parks, but it's also for movies, and then, of course, smaller parks. But it's exciting to see the places that were kind of locked down the most, you would say. They're finally starting to get open back up again, and hopefully it only continues to go up from here instead of backwards. I just went to Disney World here in Florida last weekend, and it was it's the start of spring break here, at least, and there were a lot of people there, but most people were still following the protocols pretty well, and it was handled pretty well in my opinion. So hopefully the same is true in California, and hopefully it has a successful reopening. I know a lot of people are excited to go back and check it out. And also in California, coming up soon, is the Avengers Campus area at Disney's California Adventure, which is highly anticipated because it'll be the first real Avengers area in a Disney theme park. They've had
July 18th, they said. I think, yeah, they said around July.
Well, I think that was the date last year that it was supposed to open. But there's this D23 video that came out this past week, kind of detailing more about it. And they were talking about it's ready to go, but I don't think they're going to open it right when the park opens. They'll open it this year at some point, though, which is great news. Although I want to talk about something I've been thinking about a little bit, and that brings us into another topic. But so this past week, Disney World announced Remy's Ratatouille Adventure would not be opening until October, which is kind of crazy considering it's been done for months and just kind of sitting there. But obviously they're going to open it October 1st because of the 50th anniversary. And that's also the start of their fiscal year when it comes to finances. So I'm sure it has something to do with that as well. But that ride's done and just sitting there. The Avengers Campus is done and just sitting there. And another ride that's just kind of done and sitting there is the Velocicoaster at Universal. So there's 3 major attractions coming up that we only know one release date of, and they're all pretty much done. So it kind of leads to an interesting conversation of what will open first. I'll give my predictions and then I'll ask you to do the same. So I think Remy's Ratatouille Adventure will be the last one to open on October 1st. I think Avengers Campus will open probably over the summer, probably July, like you said. And I think that because I don't think they're going to want to open anything big at Disneyland when they're trying to get people to go to Disney World for the 50th. I don't think that'd be very smart. So I think they'll try to get that open before the 50th because it's done. And then Velocicoaster, I think we could see that in the next month or two because Universal keeps just dropping more and more hints that it'll be open soon, and they keep revealing more to the public. And we keep seeing people on the ride, like just riding through it, VIPs and such. So that one's pretty close to opening, and I think they'll open that one pretty soon. So I think first will be Velocicoaster, then Avengers, and then Remy. What do you think?
I think because I know that supposedly because I had my friend sent me a video. He recently went to Orlando, and I heard they were like testing. They were doing some test rides of the Velociraptor.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, probably my guess would be June. Usually for any theme park ride would be open, maybe May, but we'll see. I mean, I'm expecting to go to Orlando sometime next month, so stay tuned. And if you want to follow me, feel free. I'll definitely cover for you if anything too.
Sweet. So I kind of think that'll be the order. I think they keep saying summer for Velocicoaster. I think they'll do soft openings for it sooner though, probably. So I don't know when though. I kind of thought Ratatouille would be open already, to be honest, because again it's just sitting there and it's ready.
Oh my Lord.
But they're waiting all the way till October, which is 200 days away from now. So, I mean, I guess that's fine. I also didn't think they would heavily advertise the ride opening like in advance because I didn't think they'd want to draw those big of crowds in the current era that we're in. But I guess I was wrong, and maybe by October they can have a full-fledged opening if things are continuing to get better. But also a sign of things getting better in the theme park industry was an announcement Universal Orlando made last week. They are resuming their construction on their property across the street, Epic Universe, which will be a new theme park, a new city walk area, some new hotels. So it's a huge deal. It's their third gate, of course, or fourth, depending what you consider Volcano Bay to be. But that's great news because it was delayed indefinitely, and a lot of people were like, oh, maybe it's not going to happen anymore. Maybe it's going to be 10 years. But it looks like, well, they've already started back on it. Like, apparently they're going pretty fast, and supposedly it'll open in 2025 is what they've said. But Epic Universe will, of course, feature the Super Nintendo World area, supposedly the biggest of the three across Japan, Hollywood, and Orlando. And then a new Harry Potter area, and then some other areas as well. But yeah.
I want to say this might be a speculation, but is it true that they're kind of having like a classic Monsterland? They're thinking of having, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's a pretty credible rumor. I think it's as with all the lands at that park, people took it from the concept art they released and basically went from there with it. But I think that is a heavily rumored land that they're going to do. The rumored lands I've heard are Fantastic Beasts, which I don't know if that'll happen or not, to be honest, because those movies have not been very popular. the Nintendo World, How to Train Your Dragon apparently, and then
Oh, DreamWorks, yeah,
the
DreamWorks.
monsters. So I think those are the initial lands.
Right, just because Universal wants Universal's the home of horror. They started the horror genre, so it'll be great to show very respectful tribute to them. So that'd be great.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
then we always have Halloween Horror Nights. But then again, it'll be nice to have Universal monsters.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to have a dark ride themed to the Universal monsters. So that'd be awesome.
I think I'm gonna.
I th- I was reading something interesting the other day, or I watched a video, and in Japan, not Japan, wherever they're building their current theme park right now, in another country. I don't remember what country that is. There's a Universal resort opening in a different country, but they have a kung
Beijing?
fu. Where?
Universal Studios Beijing.
Yeah, yeah, there.
Yeah.
They're gonna have a Kung Fu Panda land, but it was
Oh,
interesting
wow.
because I was reading before that their plan was to have a SpongeBob land, um, with a SpongeBob boat ride and a Krusty Krab and all that stuff, and so that'd be
Oh,
interesting to see in either in Epic Universe or even honestly, I think Toon Lagoon needs to be rethemed. No kids these days knows what any of that stuff is, so that'd be pretty cool because SpongeBob kind of lends itself to like a boat ride or a water ride, so that'd be pretty cool. Um, so hopefully, when with Epic Universe, hopefully we also see them update some of the current parks as well. But overall, it's exciting because it's going to create a ton of jobs in Orlando, and it's just another theme park, which we don't get that often. We get you always get new attractions, but a new theme park and basically a new resort is kind of crazy. So it's exciting. And speaking of Halloween Horror Nights, Orlando has announced their 2021 Halloween Horror Nights event. They have announced it's coming back, and it'll have more nights than ever before, with 42 nights this year. Um, they will be implementing some sort of safety protocols. I don't know if they know what that is yet because we could be in a very different place come September and October. But the cool thing is they're doing it. They announced Beetlejuice will be part of it, which they used last year for one day only, I think, and it got pretty good reviews. So this is exciting. Halloween Horror Nights is a great event. What do you think the chances are of it coming to Hollywood this year, or do you know?
Um, I know that there was like an update somewhere that I saw I think on the they posted like an event update where as soon as it said somewhere if once Universal Studios Hollywood reopens they'll continue plans for Halloween Horror Nights. I mean, I feel like it's possible because it is possible since what they're doing with the Taste of Universal event. Um, I mean
Yeah,
they could do something. They could. I mean, it could be like a downsize event. It just depends on the restrictions. I mean,
yeah.
I
Hopefully
know
they
they
get
can
to
do.
do something there.
If Orlando's doing it, I think I for sure Hollywood always tries to find a way to just because they always want to kind of always follow their sister park.
hmm
But
I think
I
it
mean,
definitely.
I really hope so.
I
Because
think it.
Halloween Horror Nights is one of their moneymaker.
Yeah, I think it helps definitely that they did the test run last year of two houses during COVID. I think it helped them decide what they're going to implement this year, and hopefully they can bring that
So
to Hollywood too.
yeah, so I'm on their website right now, HalloweenHorrorNights.com on the Hollywood
hmm
page. It says Universal Studios Hollywood looks forward to reopening our theme park as soon as possible, and we'll have lots of updates to share once we do, including our plans for Halloween Horror Nights. So stay tuned and continue to visit our website. So it's just whenever, so as soon as the theme park opens, they'll just start working on the plans.
Cool. Well, I'm excited. I typically go every year in Orlando, so I'm looking forward to seeing it this year. And it's back with more nights than ever. Maybe that's to accommodate the downsizing of the crowds, or maybe it's uh, just because it's a popular event. Looking forward to it, and of course, we'll talk more about that in the coming months as they reveal more houses and scare zones and more details. And speaking of horror, A Quiet Place
I
2. What were you gonna say?
Oh, and I was gonna say one more thing. I just remember last year in 2020, they were building the mazes. Supposedly,
hmm
because I've been looking over on YouTube, people, all these how when the park was closed, people, I guess, sent drones over the park, and they were supposedly construction was happening around the time. But I mean, it's possible. I want to say it's possible. But yeah, 50-50 at this point. But yeah, go on. Quiet Place.
Well, that also reminds me, a lot of the houses were already built in Orlando, and they kept them. They just kept them built. So I think we'll get a lot of stuff we were supposed to get last year, this year. But anyway, A Quiet Place 2, the sequel to the very popular and very good first Quiet Place film by John Krasinski. That was supposed to come out last year, or actually like a year ago, like next week, I think. And it was one of the first victims of COVID as far as movies go. And so that's been delayed several times, and it was delayed until this September. But we actually got some good news for once, and John Krasinski announced it's been moved to May instead of September. So it'll be coming out in just a couple of months, and that is great news for the movie industry. It's great news also for Black Widow, which we haven't heard in a while of good news for. It's good news because everything is moving away, but now some things are moving back to May because it seems like it'll be worth releasing since, LA and New York are back open, or they will be back open. But meanwhile, a couple more films shifted release dates. Minions 2 delayed by a whole another year to 2022 in July, which I think is a little crazy, but that is a summer movie. It's a kids movie, so they know they can make a lot of money off that movie, and I guess if that's what they think they should do, then that's fine. It's just crazy how long it will have been since the last Despicable Me film by the time that comes out in 2022. And then also Universal moved Fast 9 another month or something like that. That'll still be hitting in just a couple months, so that's fine. But overall, this is some pretty good news. We have some things moving forward, some things moving back. But what do you think about this? How do you think this fares for the movie season this summer?
I think 2022 will be will be the year of the movies, like a lot of hits coming out since movie theaters are starting to reopen and I think we'll definitely see a few movies like Black Widow, probably Spider-Man in time for Spider-Man No Way Home. What is supposed to come out this year?
Well, actually, speaking of Black Widow, Disney had their shareholder call the other day, and they said Black Widow is coming out May 7th. They're sticking with that date. So, and still theaters only, which I think is possible. I think it's a good idea just to go ahead with it.
I heard about since they're coming out with a Minions movie, by Universal Studios Hollywood just made like a Minions cafe for the Taste of Universal in time for this. So that's pretty cool. Like they're really fixing it up nice for that land, super silly fun land. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and another film that has been moved, kind of unfortunately, it wasn't moved recently, but the Jurassic World movie was supposed to come out this summer, and that's when they were going to open the Velocicoaster, to coincide with it. So a lot of those things, also the Guardians roller coaster here was way back in the day. It was going to coincide with Guardians 3, which won't be out for a few years. But all that is kind of unfortunate because, they try to work them together, kind of, just for cross-promotion and stuff. But it's good news overall that the movie theater industry is coming back. I think 2021, the rest of the year, will be pretty packed with movies. But I think 2022, as you said, will be extremely packed with movies. Marvel has 4 movies coming out this year, a ton of Disney Plus stuff. And next week, for those of you who don't know, Falcon and Winter Soldier will begin on Disney Plus, which is very exciting. Some reviews of that came out today. All of them are fairly positive, and that's kind of all that they've said so far. There is a lot of action, like typical MCU stuff. It feels a lot like The Winter Soldier, as many have predicted. Like the Captain America film, The Winter Soldier. It's going to be hard to realize this is called Falcon and the Winter Soldier, so you can't really refer to it like that. But I'm excited for that show. I thought WandaVision was awesome. And so there's a lot of good content coming this year, which is great because last year was just desolate of any kind of entertainment, especially when we all needed it, stuck at home. So that's all great news. And yeah, those are pretty much our news topics for today. Um, I wanted to talk real quick about last week. I went to Walt Disney World, as I said, and there's just one quick thing I wanted to talk about of the whole thing. It's obviously spring break, so it was pretty crowded, or it felt pretty crowded. But what I don't think people realize is everyone keeps being like, oh, Disney secretly raised the capacity, blah, blah, blah. That can't be true. It's at 35%, as they've said. But what most people don't realize is it's 35% of capacity, not 35% of normal attendance. So let's say on any given day, they reach 50% of capacity, which is close to what they normally do reach. If they can let 100,000 people in, they typically would let 50,000 in, or that's how many would come. So right now it's capped at 37,000, 35,000, something like that. And if that's full, which it typically is right now, that's close to what it normally is. So no wonder it seems crowded, because you have normal crowds at the moment, just way more spread out. So all the lines are super long. Everyone's like, oh, wow, that's crazy. I'm not waiting in that line. But the lines end up being way shorter than they're projected. So just a tip, if you go wait in the lines, they're not as bad as they look. They are, like Tower of Terror goes on for like a mile and a half sometimes. But you move the entire time, so the line's not that bad. But that's just kind of what I noticed. And I've been several times since they reopened. They've definitely gotten more and more crowded as time has gone on, which is to be expected. It's a good thing, which means more resorts will open back up and more jobs will come back. So it's a good thing. But yeah, just wanted to clear that up. Overall, it was a good experience. And yeah, I mean, there wasn't anything really new to discuss there at the moment. It's just, it's normal. I was at Magic Kingdom, Hollywood Studios. Spring break crowds were there, as I said. So it was a good time, though. Have you been out, I know City Walk and stuff has been open, or Downtown Disney. Have you been to either of those lately at all, or no?
I have downtown usually I visit maybe once or twice a month, but downtown Disney like here in California, now you can find outdoor dining. I believe during this in January, probably around, I want to say maybe the third week of January, fourth week, they started opening outdoor ever since. And then since then, and now it's now we're in March, it's less restrictions are coming. So it's this is we're finally California's actually finally opening. Yeah, it's we're finally seeing less restrictions out.
Yeah, I did notice, though, for those who care, the parks are really good about maintaining distance most of all, and just keeping people away from each other. But Disney Springs is pretty bad. Everyone's pretty tightly packed together. There's no reservation system there, so they don't really limit people. I'm sure they do somehow, but it's really not that limited. The lines to get in are sometimes long, and Disney Springs is great. I went early afternoon instead of when people typically would go, so it wasn't bad getting in. But as I was leaving, a lot of people were there, and so if you are trying to be cautious about that, just note that. But overall, it's been a good experience, and hopefully the parks in California can be successful with it as well. I'm sure they will be, and if you're local to California, which I think is the only way to get in right now, I definitely recommend going while it's at 15%, because back in August I went when it was like that here, and it was amazing. It probably will never be like that again, so it's definitely worth checking out for the short lines and just the empty parks. It's pretty cool. And with that, that'll be the end of our show today. Thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you, guys.
And we will be back next week with more news topics, more about Falcon and Winter Soldier, more about the Snyder Cut, which comes out next week. It's a very exciting week. It's a good time to be a fan of just entertainment, movies, theme parks. And we'll see you guys next week. Thank you for tuning in.